We begin the Gemara today on the bottom of Daf Chavav Amud Beis. Tana Rabbanon, the last line. Got it? Tana Rabbanon, a oval that's traveling from one place to another, and then he finds out that he became an oval actually while he was traveling. If he's able to minimize and refrain from his business, Yamayit, so then he should minimize. Vimlav, but if he can't, Yigalgol Imoin. So then the business he does, he should not do it alone, but he should do it together with others. So it won't be just him alone doing the business as an oval, but together with others. Okay, that's the way Rashi explains the Gemara. Taisus here adds to that it's speaking about a situation where there would be a financial loss. There's a few other pshatim in Taisus, but that's what Taisus says in the beginning. Tan Rabbanan, we learned in the Braise, Me'emesai kaifin esamitis. Going back to the halacha that it said in the Mishnah, that an oval is supposed to turn over the beds. So for when there's this obligation, Mishiyatza mi Pesach Beisa. Divrei Rabbi Eliezer. So Rabbi Eliezer says from when the body is taken out of the house, so then they have to turn over all the beds in the house. Rabbi Yeshua says Mishiyisasima Goilo, from after the completion of the Kvura. Just like the Avelis B'chlal begins from that point, the same thing, this halacha of turning over the beds. So Maisa, it happened, Shemeis Rabbi Gamliel Azakin, when Rabbi Gamliel Azakin passed away, and Kivin Sheyatzim Pesach Beisa, as soon as they took him out of the house, Amalem Rabbi Eliezer said to the people in the house, Kfu mitteseichem, turn over the beds of the house. Then after they finished the Kvura in the house, Amalem Rabbi Yeshua, so then Rabbi Yeshua turned to them and said, Kfu mitteseichem, turn over the beds in your house. Amrulai, they told Rabbi Yeshua, Kvar kafinu al pizakin. We already turned over the beds of the house according to the Zakin, according to Rabbi Eliezer, that told us, according to his opinion, that it should be turned over from when the mace is taken out of the house. Tana Rabbanon, we learned Nabraise, Me'emesai zoikfin esamitis be'erev Shabbos. From when could you pick back up the beds out of Shabbos when it's Shabbos interrupts the Avelis? Mina mincha ulamayla. From the time of mincha going forward. So there's a Taisus over here brings that it's a suffix whether this refers to Mincha Gedaila or Mincha Katana. Okay, Kopanim, Taisus brings it. From here we see this that the oval does not sit in a regular chair and so on. It's from this Indian of turning over the beds. You can look over here in the second Taisus on the page. He brings this. This is the Gemara. This is the source of this concept. Kopanim. So the Gemara says Mina Mincha Lamayla, whichever it may be, Mincha Gedaila or Mincha Katana. Even though they turn back over the beds to put them on the right side up, but you don't sit on it until at night, then you can sit normally on the beds. And then on Matzah Shabbos, even if all that's left to the Shiva is one day, which could even be just part of that one day, you have to turn over the beds again. On the Rabbanan and Abraise, we learned when you turn over the beds in the house of the oval, it's not just his bed that he turns over. All of the beds in the house should be turned over. He has 10 beds in 10 different places. He has to turn them all over. Even if there are 5 brothers, and one of them passes away, and Mefarshim say the pshat of here is that they are not all in the same house. Kulan kaifin, all in wherever they are, even if they're not together with the brother in the place where he passed away, the beds have to be turned over. If it's a bed that's not made for people to sit on it or to lie on it, but it's made to store kalim there, that does not have to be turned over. Dargish, a dargish, which will be now the discussion of the Gemara, what exactly this dargish is, it does not have to be turned over, you can leave it right side up. Rab Shimon Gamliel says regarding this dargish, that a dargish, matir es karbitov, you untie the strings that are holding it up, that are holding it together, and it falls down on its own. So the Gemara now here will discuss my dargish. What is this dargish that the Braise is speaking about? Omar Ula. So Ula says that the dargish is an arsa de gada. It's a chair that people don't sit on it. Rashi here explains gada. The word gada is meloshin god, which means a good mazel. It's a chair that people have in the house that's not used, and it's used for a good mazel, a mazel teif. Okay? Interesting thing. It's almost like similar, like you have a kisa shel that nobody sits on, and it's used just for that sake. So you have in the house a chair that's designated for a mazel tov. Amalei Rabbe, so Rabbe said, if that's what this chair is, if so, Gabe Melech, regarding a king, it's now in the Mishnah it says, that everybody sits on the ground. When you come to be Menachem Aval, a king, you sit on the ground. And the king reclines on this chair that's called a dargish. So the question is, why is he using this dargish if it's not designated b'chlal for use? Is there something that that until now we don't use it to sit on it, and now the king sits on it? Why? I mean, this is not made to sit on it b'chlal. So what's the point? So the Gemara says that's not a question. Maskef lo Rav Ashi, so Rav Ashi asked on this question itself, my kushya, what's the question? Midi dahava achilu ushtiya, just like it is regarding bringing the king to eat and to drink by an oval. So the first meal you're supposed to bring, the oval is not supposed to eat from his own, you're supposed to bring him a meal to eat and drink. The adid, until now, lo yachline v'lo yashkina, we don't bring the king food or drinks. But hashta, now the king is an oval, just like every oval, we change and we bring him food and drink. So if so, maybe the same thing applies to the king, that there's another change here. Even though this dargish is usually there and it's not something made to sit on, just made for a good mazel, but maybe here there's some kind of a change and the king does sit on it. So that from that Mishnah there's no question on this pshat of Ula regarding the dargish. Elo, so the Gemara says, Yikashya hakashya. If there's a question on what Ula said about this dargish, the question is as follows. The Tanya we learned in the Braisa that it said before, the dargish ein tzarech l'chvaisai. That this dargish, you don't have to turn it over. Elazaykfa, you leave it right side up. V'i arse de gada, if this dargish is this chair that's made for a good mazel, amayen etzarach lechbaisai. Why should it not be turned over? Hatanya, didn't we learn in the Braisa, hakoife mitosai, when you turn over the beds, loy mitosai b'vada koife, it's not only your bed, elakol mitas shesh le b'tech beisai koife. All chairs, all beds that you have in the house have to be turned over. So therefore the dargish should also be turned over. So the Gemara says again regarding this question on Ula, it's not a question. My kushya kashya, what's the question? If this dargish is not made to sit on, so then it's similar to a bed that's designated to store kalim there. The Tanya, so the Braisa before said, a bed that's designated for having kalim there, it doesn't have to be turned over. So therefore the same is with this dargish, because it's not made for people to sit on, to lie on, so therefore you don't turn it over. So Ella, the Gemara says, Ikashya, if there's a question on what Ula said a dargish is, Hakashya. The question here is as follows. Rab Shimon Gamliel said, what's a dargish? What do you do with it? Dargish, mater karvitov, you untie with the knots of what was holding it up, and v'hu noiful me'elov, and it falls down on its own. That this is a special chair that's designated for a good mazel and nobody sits on it. My karbitin islay. So why? How does this make sense? Why does it have these laces that are holding it up, and then you untie it and it falls down? If it's a chair that's made for good luck, it's not a kind of chair that is made that you could tie or untie. Right? From the fact that he's saying that you could untie it, it sounds like it's some kind of a portable bed or some kind of a portable chair that you can move and untie it and put it back together. But that doesn't make sense with the pshat of Ula, that it's a chair that's just kept there and nobody sits on it. So therefore, based on this, the Gemara basically refutes what Ula's pshat was, and it brings there a different pshat. Ki asa Ravin, so when Ravin came, so one of the Rabbanon, and that is Rav Tachlifa that came from Eretz Yisrael. So he said that he was found a lot in the marketplace where they would work with leather. My dargish, what is this bed that's called a dargish, or this chair that's called a dargish? Arsa detzala. It's a chair that's made from high hide of the animal, from leather. And this was some kind of a portable chair, as the Mefarshim said, there's a Rashi and the Ksav Yad. So he says that it was this kind of a portable chair that they took around, noblemen would carry around with them their own beds or their own chairs, and this was something that they always took with them. And it was made with this hide of the animal that they spread over the frame, and then they tied it up, and then they took it apart. So that's this bed that the Braisa is speaking about. Itmernami, we learned also, some take out the words Itmernami because it doesn't seem like it's bringing a raya, it's just saying another point. Rabbi Yirmiyah said regarding this dargish sirugai mitoichai. The way they tied the straps of the hide that they placed on top of the frame, there was holes inside the wooden frame. They had holes inside that frame, and in there they put in the threads, the strings to tie it in. Mita, a regular bed is not done that way. Siruga al gaba. You put when you tie the bed, the spread on top of the frame, it goes over the frame and not inside. There's no holes inside the frame. I guess the point basically is, I'm not sure exactly how, but the point is that this portable bed that was made to take apart from time to time, it was made in such a way that it should be easier to untie it and take it apart. So it was made inside with holes inside. It's easier to be taken apart. Amar Rav Yaakov Barach, Amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi, Halacha kerab Shimon Gamliel. The halacha is like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel that even this dargish, this portable bed, should also be lowered down by just releasing the ties, and then it falls down. Itmanami, or some take out this Itmanami here. Amar Rabbi Yaakov Barach, Amar Rav Asi. So he said another halacha of another type of bed. Mita shenaklita yotzin. You have a bed that has 4 poles on all 4 sides, and they put a canopy above this bed. You have this in the Gemara in Sukkah. It talks about these kind of beds that have a canopy over it. Rashi says they put this canopy and they put curtains for a person not to get bitten by the flies. So what do you do with this? Zoikfa v'dayon. So there's 2 pshat in what this Gemara means. 1 pshat in the Gemara means you can leave it upright because it has these big poles. It's not really easy to turn it over. So you can leave it upright and that's okay. This is a bed that does not have to be turned over. Others say zoikfa v'dayon means that you don't have to turn over the entire bed. It's enough if you just remove the canopy. Once you remove the canopy, so you see that you made some change over here, and that's an expression of the avelus, even without turning over the whole bed. Tana Rabbanon, and Abraisa we learned, Yoshan al gabi kise. Person that sleeps instead of in a bed, he sleeps in a chair. Or al gabi udaini gedayla. Or he sleeps on this big cover of a big cover. Or a mortar is another pshat, huh? You have the pshat of a mortar, okay. Or al gabi karka, or he just sleeps on the ground. Lo yotze dechivas is not yotzes chiyav of what we're saying here, that a person has to turn over his bed. In other words, the point of this inyan of turning over the bed is not an inyan of tsar, that a person should sleep in a painful way, should sleep on the floor. The point is that the Gemara before brought a makar from a pasuk that by turning over a bed, there's a certain expression of avelus that you see in that pasuk, but it's not stam to sleep on the floor to give yourself pain. Rabbi Yochanan, the reason why he's not yetzis chiyav shleikiyim kfiyas hamita, he's not mekayim this inyan that it says there to turn over the bed. Tana Rabbanan, Abraisa we learned, Mechabdin, you can sweep the floor in the house of an oval, Umar Bitzin, in those times when the floors were sand, so they would sprinkle water on the floor so the sand shouldn't rise up. Beveis oval in the house of an oval. Umadichin, they can also wash, kaires, the plates, kaises, cups, tzloichies, other kinds of plates, kitaines and jugs, Beveis oval in the house of the oval. But they don't bring mugmar, which is coals that had in it besamim that created an aroma in the house, or other kinds of besamim. So that not. Is this true that you're not allowed to bring these spices, this besamim, this good aroma in the house? But Vatani Bar Kapare said, you don't make a bracha on this mugmar, on these coals, or on the besamim in the house of an oval. So what do you see from what Bar Kapare said? You don't make a bracha on them. But to bring them into the house of Oval is allowed. So the Gemara answers, like Kashi, it's not a question. If it's in the house of the Oval, meaning in the house where the mace, the bed, the body is actually there, so there you're allowed to bring these besamim and the coals in order to bring a fresh aroma into the house. And beveisa menachmin. But in the house where all the relatives are there and the body of the dead body is not in that house, over there, you're not allowed to bring in this good aroma into the house. You're not allowed to bring the food into the house of the oval. As we said before, that the meal was brought, people brought and served the meal for the avelim, so you're not allowed to deliver the food, loy betavla, not on a big tray, loy baskutla, and not on some other kind of a plate. It's smaller than that. V'loy bekinun, also a certain kind of a basket, some kind of a fancy basket. Ela besalim. It's brought in a very plain wicker basket. That's how you serve the food. And v'ein oimrim birchas avelim b'moed. And you don't say the birchas avelim that's usually said menachem avelim. That bracha is not said in chol hamoed. According to some Mefarshim, even the beginning of the Mishnah is referring to Chol HaMoed, that even in Chol HaMoed, you may think that then you could serve in a more fancy way, but even in Chol HaMoed you shouldn't. Aval, continuing regarding Chol HaMoed, Oimdim B'Shura, they do stand after the Kvura, so they stand in a line to be Menachem Aval, or Menachmen, and they're Menachem Aval, the Avelim, or Paitran Esarabim, and immediately everyone, you tell the people that are Menachem to go back to their houses. They don't follow to the houses of the Avelim. Ein Menachmen, and Menachem Chol HaMoed as well, Ein Manichen, that is. You don't place a Samita, the coffin, Berachayv, out in the street, like it would be done in a Lavaya outside, and over there was a hesped and so on. Shalei lahargal is a hesped, so they shouldn't get into the habit of giving a hesped and Chol HaMoed. V'loy shel nashim la'olam, and for women they never place the mitta, the coffin, out into the street. Mipnei yakovet, because of her honor. And Ashir says shefa ziva, there could still be a ziva that comes out, and this would be an embarrassment. Sagt the Gemara, Tana Rabbana, we learned in Abraise, Bari Shaina, in the beginning, the custom was as follows. They would bring the food for the house of the Avelim. So if it was Ashirim, or rich people, Bekalsa Shel Kesef, silver trays, or V'Shalzav, gold trays. V'Aniyim, and for the poor people, B'Sali Nitzarim Shel Arava Klufa. They would have these wicker baskets that were made from the willow branches that were peeled. V'Aniyim is Baishim. The poor people were embarrassed of how they're being served their food. So they instituted that everybody should serve the food by the house of the Avelim with these cheap baskets, that it should be for the honor of the Aniyim. Similarly, the Gemara here brings a few different things that they made, that they instituted for the same reason. In the beginning, they would bring to drink in the house of the Avelim, Ashirim, so for the rich people, with white glass, which sounds like crystal. And the house of the Aniyim, it was a cheaper stained glass. And the poor people were embarrassed about this. Hiskino, they instituted that everybody should be served with a cheap stained glass for the honor of the Aniyim. Another thing they instituted was Bari Shaina in the beginning, so the face of the person that passed away, they would leave his face open if he was a rich person. So he had a rich, nice, beautiful face. And the face of a poor person was covered because their face was dark and black because of the hunger that they passed away from. And the poor people were embarrassed with this. They instituted that they cover everyone's face for the honor of the Aniyim. Another thing, but Ishaina in the beginning, they would bring out the Aniyim in this more special, honorable kind of a bed, which is called a dargish. This is not the same dargish that we spoke about before, I don't think so. But it was some more chashuv kind of a coffin. V'aniyim b'chliva, and aniyim were brought out. She says kliva is a mital shomesim, some kind of a bed. I think it's made like a ladder. It's not made with a full bottom. More a cheaper kind of a bed that they brought out in the coffin of the poor people. V'aniyim is baishim, and the poor people were embarrassed with this. Hiskino, so they instituted shi'akoil moitziim b'kliva. Everyone should come out with the same simple coffin mipnei kvodim shalaniyim for the honor of the poor people. Another thing, but Ishaina in the beginning, a person that passed away because of issues that he had with his stomach, with his intestines, and then there was not a good aroma with his body, so they would place mugmar, these besamim, the coals that create a good aroma for this body. So people that had these issues with their intestines, and while they were alive, they were embarrassed about this, thinking about what would happen to them, that when they're going to pass away, they're going to place these coals below them, and everybody's going to know about this chaylim ayim that they had. They were embarrassed about it. So Eskinu, they instituted that they placed these besamim under everybody, for the honor of these people that have this intestines and this problem, so that everyone should be the same. A similar thing they instituted, body shine in the beginning, a woman that passed away and she was a nida, so all of her garments that she wore when she was alive became tameh from her being a nida. So they would table it after she passed away. So these nidais, while they were alive, they were embarrassed about this, that everyone's going to see after they passed away that they were a nida. So Iskinu, they instituted shiyumat bilin and gabi kol anoshim. They should be tovel all of the garments of women that pass away for the honor of the nidas, that they shouldn't be noticeable. Chayas, the nidas that are alive that were embarrassed about this. The final thing over here, or one of the final things over here, there's a bunch of different things they masakin, similar thing, but Ishayna matbirin lagabi zavim mesim, for zavim, for the men that were zavim, and also their garments become tamei, so they would tovel their garments after they passed away. And when they were alive, they were embarrassed about this. Hiskinu, they instituted shimat bilim algav akoil, that they would be toveling all of the garments of anyone that passes away. For the honor of those zavim, when they're alive, they shouldn't be embarrassed about this. But Ishaina in the beginning, so to bring out a person that passed away for burial was more difficult for the relatives, even more than the very fact that he passed away. The cost of getting him the beautiful tachrichim that the minig was to dress him in was very inhibiting for people. And to the point that the relatives would leave the mace and they would run away. They couldn't afford the tachrichim, and they were embarrassed about this. Until Rabbi Gamliel himself came, and he behaved regarding himself in a light-headed manner, and he instructed the people regarding himself that he should be dressed in the tachrichim, in the shrouds that are very simple. And they brought out his body in kli pishtan, in simple linen tachrichim that were very cheap. Then the minig became after this. It was instituted lotzeis bekli pishtan, that you bring out the mace with these tachrichim that are very simple kli pishtan. Rav Papa said, now the minig is to use even cheaper garments, which is tzarda. Rashi says cannabis, which is canvas. How do they translate it there? Yeah, canvas garment. Bar zuzah, which is just the value of a zuz, it's very cheap. That's so it shouldn't be difficult for the relatives. Going back to what it said in the Mishnah, you don't place the coffin out in the street, so they shouldn't come to make a spade. Rav Papa said, that's all for a regular person, but for a Talmud Chacham, there's no mayid that stops the spadim for a Talmud Chacham. And definitely, a Talmud Chacham that passes away in Chanukah and Purim, they still give him a hesped at that time. But the Gemara adds, when is this? If it's only talking about in front of the Talmud Chacham that passed away, so they make a hesped. But if it's not in its presence, then it's there's no hesped in there. Fragt the Gemara, is this true? But Rav Kahane softe le Rav Zvid minerdo. Rav Kahane gave a hesped for Rav Zvid when he passed away, and Rav Zvid was from where? From Nerdo, and he gave a hesped for him on Cholamayid bepum nara, in the city Pum Nara, which is far away. It's not befonov. Rav Papi answers, Yom Shmua, the day that you hear that it actually happened, that he passes away, that was a day that Rav Kahana gave the hesped for Rav Zvid, and that's considered to be like he's right in front of him if it's on that day itself. Now the Gemara talks about the different aspects of a hesped itself. Hesped, this expression of hesped that comes from the pasuk, as the Gemara is going to quote, alev, is when the person that's giving the hesped bangs his hands on his heart. The chsiv, as the pasuk says, al shadayim seiftim, that on the shadayim, on their breasts, they bang their hands. Tipuach, the expression of tipuach, which we'll have later in the Mishnah, is biyad, is when they clap their hands to one another. Kilos, the expression of kilos, which is also mentioned later, and it's mentioned in psukim, is beregel, when they would stamp their feet on the ground. Tana Rabbana, we learn Abraisa Mekalas, a person that's stamping his feet on the ground by a hesped, lo yekalas besandal. He should not do this wearing sandals, because it could harm his feet. Ela b'mino, only if he's wearing proper shoes. Mipnei asakana, he put his feet into danger. Rabbi Yechanan said regarding nichum avelim. Oval, when you come to nichum avelim and you see that the oval kivin shenina reishay, once he nods with his head, shuven menachmim rasham leishavetzle. So that's a sign that the people that are coming to console should not continue sitting by him. In other words, that means that he wants to be left alone and you shouldn't continue bothering him. Rabbi Yechanan said, when the nasi walks into the room, everybody is obligated to stand up for him. Chutz ma'avol v'chayla. Besides an avol or a sick person that are not obligated to get up for him. Rabbi Yechanan said, L'koil oimrim lahem shavu. To everyone, the nasi says to sit down, and they sit down only after the nasi gives them permission to sit down. Chutz ma'avol v'chayla. Besides an avol and a chayla, they could sit down before because they never even had an obligation to get up in the first place. Or there's another pshat in this, that the oval, the nasi that is, does not say to the oval or the chayla to sit down, because that's like not a good expression. He's telling them sit down in avelus, so he doesn't tell them to sit down in avelus, or chayla as well. Rav Yudah said in the name of Rav, oval yom rishoin asa lecha lecha mishaloi. On the first day, with the food that he eats, he doesn't eat from himself. As we mentioned before, the food is served and is brought to the avelim the first meal. We learn this from what the Eibusha said to Yecheskel. This is when his wife was going to pass away. So the Eibusha tells him that he should not keep the halachas of Avelos the way people usually keep it. And the Eibusha tells him, V'lechem anoshim, bread and food from other people, lo yisaychel. You don't have to eat like regular Avelim that eat from other people. So from this we understand that usually by Avelim, there's others that come and serve the food. Rabbi and Rav Yosef, so by Rabbi and Rav Yosef, when they were Avelim, mechlefi sudesayu la'adadi. They exchanged their meals with one another. When Rabbi was an oval, so Rav Yosef brought him the meal, and when Rav Yosef was an oval, Rabbi brought him the meal. Rav Yudah said in the name of Rav, meis be'ir. If there's a person that passed away in the city and he wasn't buried yet, kol b'nei ir, all people of the city, asurim vasiyas malacha, have to stop from their work to make sure that this person gets buried. So Rav Amnona ikla lil derumta. Rav Amnona found himself in the city derumta. Shama kol shipura the shichva. He heard that they blew shofar, which was to announce the fact that someone passed away. Chaza hanachin. He saw these people in the city there. The kavdi avidita. They're continuing to work. Amalahu. So he said to them, Lahavu hanachin shi b'shamta. These people that are continuing to work when there's a person that has to be buried should be put into a shamta. He told them, isn't there a person here that passed away that has to be buried? So why are you continuing to work? So they answered him, there's a group of people here in the city that attend to this, which is like what we have today. There's a Chevra Kadisha that takes care of this. So then he said to them, if so, it's allowed for you to continue working even when there's someone that's not buried. You can go and work, that is. Okay. Rav Yudah said in the name of Rav, call him Miskasha, Halmeisai, Yosem Midai. A person that complains and cries too strongly regarding someone that passed away, so then Almeis Acher Hu Beicher. What could end up happening is that he's going to have to cry for another relative that will pass away. And the reason for this is that yes, there is an union of Avelos to mourn and to express the grief of what happened, but to cry too much means that a person is not accepting the ways of Hashem, so then it could chas v'shalom bring to something else that will happen, which Gemara here brings a terrible story that happened regarding this, that there was this woman, the Ava b'shvivusa de Rav Huna, that was living in the neighborhood of Rav Huna. Hava la shiva bani, she had 7 children. Meis chad minayu, and one of her children passed away. Havas kobachia biyaserta, she was crying unusual, more than usual, alei, on that child that passed away. Shalach la Rav Huna, so Rav Huna sent to tell her, Leisavdi hachi, don't do this, that there's a certain amount that a person expresses the grief, but the way she's crying, it's not appropriate, she shouldn't do this. Lo yashkach bei, she did not pay attention to his directive. Shalach lo, so he sent her again, and he said to her that this is not, it's dangerous. Itzaisis mutif. If you're going to listen, then it'll be good for you. But v'iloi, if you won't listen, tzavis zavdisa lidach. You could prepare the way for the others that are going to go in their way as well, that will pass away as well. Right? So the tzavis zavdisa it means you can prepare the tzeder l'derech. You can prepare the other ones that could pass away based on this. What happened? She had another child that passed away. And again, she did not behave properly to know that the person has to accept what Hashem does. Umisu kulu, and in the end, all of her children passed away. And she still was crying and couldn't accept it. L'saif amalah, in the end, he said to her, based on your behavior, Teimish zavdisel nafsheich, you could prepare for yourself to go on the way to follow the children that passed away. Umisa, and she passed away as well. It says in the pasuk, "Al tifku lemeis v'al tanudu loy." Don't cry for a person that passes away. And al tanudu loy, what does this mean? Al tifku lemeis yosem idai. When a person cries for a mace and it's more than what is allowed, more than necessary, so that's not a good idea. V'al tanudu loy yosem v'kashir, and a person should not mourn, should not express his grief more than necessary. What is this? Ha ketzat. So what is the halacha of avelus? Shloisha yamim, first 3 days lebechi. That's designated. That's for crying, for bechi. Shiva, then there's the 7 days is lahesped, to eulogize and so on. And shloishim is legiyutz and letaspeidus. And then in the first 30 days, so you're not allowed to wash, do laundry, and take a haircut. V'kam ve'elech, after this, Omar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Eibusha says, Yi'atem rachmanim b'yosem mimenu. If you are more merciful than me myself, which I have done what I did, so then so you can cry, you can continue crying for the one that went. So what does this mean? Well, how do we tie this pasuk? Omer Rav Yehuda, what does this pasuk mean? This refers to a person that passes away from the world without any children. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Ozal lebei Avle Lo Ozal, that is. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi did not go to the house of any Avelim because he was too busy learning. He didn't want to take off his time from his learning. Ela l'man dazal b'lei bani. The only place to the house of Aval that he went to is to a person that passed away without any children. Because here in this pasuk it says b'chu bachol lahaylech, that over here you have to cry. It says a double lashon, you cry extra for a person that's going. It's like the pasuk says, usually you're not allowed to cry extra, but over here, person that passes away without children, so over here there's an extra sadness for this, so there he would go. That's a continuation of that pasuk, that he will not do tshuva again and see the land of his birth. Who is this referring to that will not do tshuva? Ravuna said, this refers to a person that does Aveda once and repeats it again. When it says Ravuna follows his opinion. Ravuna said, Kivin, person that did an Aveda and then repeats it again, it's permitted for him. What does this mean? This means it's permitted for him. For him, once a person repeats the Aveda once and again, for this person it becomes like permissible in his eyes. Rab Levi said, Avol shloishi yom marishonim. So on Avol, the first 3 days after a relative passes away, Yires Hatzma, you should see himself kilu cherev menachas le ben shtei yarchaisav, or ben shtei chseifav, as if there's a sword that's still hanging between his 2 shoulders. Once the Satan comes into the family, so then he should be concerned about this, that there's still a sword here. Mishloishat Shiva, from the Shloisha until the end of the Shiva, kilu menachas le kenegdoi b'keren zavis, as if there's still a sword that's hanging in the house, in a corner of the house. Mikan ve'elech, from here going forward, kilu eiveres kenegdoi b'shuk, as if this sword is still passing by him in the marketplace. So he should still be concerned about this. If I'm not mistaken, it says in Sfarim, it's brought also in the Shulchan Aruch, or maybe I think it's brought in Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, that if a person has a relative that passes away, and then in the family there's a boy that is born, so then that's a siman that the bad mazel that came from the Satan, from this sword that's there in the family, was removed. Srapa kol mishpacha could be it's connected to that. Yeah, I'm Simon B'Tayf.